Hey guys, welcome to the first episode of my podcast, YBA News. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about Your Bizarre Adventure and its inspiration. Now, you may be wondering, what is Your Bizarre Adventure? Well, it is a semi-popular role-playing and fighting game on the online platform Roblox, originally developed by a man codenamed Uzuki in 2019. It revolves around the events of the hit series JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. It is free to play with optional priced features such as private servers, in-game storage, and certain items. So what is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? This franchise originated as a Japanese manga series, manga being the Japanese equivalent of comic books, read top right to bottom left. It was created by Hirohiko Araki in 1987 and is still ongoing today. The series is split into parts, with each part telling a character's different story, while typically improving upon the art style and storytelling with each new part. Within the past year, the manga recently finished up with its 8-part, entitled JoJolion, consisting of 110 volumes and over 4,500 pages. Part 9, JoJo Lands, is said to start releasing in early 2023. And starting in 2012, a company in Japan formerly known as David Production began to adapt the manga into an anime format. Currently, they are finished with all of parts 1 through 5, and the final 14 episodes out of 38 episodes of Part 6, Stone Ocean, are releasing on Netflix this December 1st. The following is a list of all of the 9 parts in order. Number 1, Phantom Blood. Number 2, Battle Tendency. Number 3, Stardust Crusaders. Number 4, Diamond is Unbreakable. Number 5, Golden Wind. Number 6, Stone Ocean. Number 7, Steel Ball Run. Number 8, JoJolion. And the not yet released Part 9, JoJo Lands. The series revolves around a family of people known as the Joestars, with every part featuring one of their descendants as the main protagonist. The first part features Jonathan Joestar, nicknamed Jojo, and his mortal enemy Dio Brando, or just Dio. Dio becomes JoJo's adopted brother, and after his father, Dario Brando, passes away, he attempts to take over the Joestar, estate. But in an attempt to do so, he rejects his humanity, obtaining an ancient relic that belonged to the Joestars that transforms him into a vampire. But JoJo ends up defeating him. That's basically the premise of Part 1. And the rest of the series revolves around the lasting effect of Dio and his followers, with Dio himself coming back to life and being defeated again in Part 3, Stardust Crusaders. This is a vital turning point in the series, as it is when the idea of stands are introduced. In the series, a stand is known as the manifestation of one's physical energy and fighting spirit, with stands coming in all shapes, sizes, and abilities.
こいつはやばいぜ。はあ、逃れることはできん。ザ・ワールド。
Abilities. Some random examples of stands are Dio's The World, a golden humanoid figure having a range of up to 15 meters, incredible strength, and the ability to stop time for up to 9-second intervals.
一旦おめえを直せばよ。これで全然卑怯じゃねえわけだな。
Another is Josuke Higashikata's Crazy Diamond, another humanoid stand having a range of 2 meters with the ability to restore objects and people to a previous state, which allows him to heal and repair objects. Some more odd stands exist, however, one of which being Narancia Jigra's Aerosmith, a small red toy plane with the ability to track CO2 levels in any given environment, as well as shoot from a minigun attached to his wings, with firepower comparable to that of a real gun. Stands can also evolve over time, gaining new forms, abilities, and more, such as Johnny Joestar's Tusk, which evolves 4 times throughout Part 7 Steel Ball Run. The game's main storyline is based heavily off of Parts 5 and 6 of the series, Part 5 being titled JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind. In this part, representing the theme of fate, the main character, Giorno Giovanna, attempts to fulfill his dreams of overturning the mysterious organization known as Passione, that represents the largest crime family in Italy, controlling its drug trade. He wants to take control of this organization using his newly obtained stand with the intent to cease the selling of drugs to children, and in doing so he makes his way into a gang under Passione led by their leader Bruno Bucciarati, who shares the same aspirations as Giorno Giovanna. The gang, now consisting of Giorno Giovanna, Bruno Bucciarati, Leon Abbacchio, Panicotta Fugo, Guido Mista, Narancia Gigra, and occasionally some other people, are given missions by the boss, one of which being to keep the boss's daughter, Trish Una, safe and return her to him. The reason why this would be such a challenge is that the boss, who controls Passione, is unknown to all, and it seems that everyone who attempts to, or does find his true identity, is killed by him. So if others from opposing organizations or gangs found out that the boss had a daughter, they may stop at nothing to kidnap her in order to gain leverage to find the boss's identity. After a series of events that lasted half the part, they managed to deliver Trish to the boss's location. Bucciarati and Giorno also see this as a chance to find out the boss's true identity, and Bruno goes into the church where he was currently residing with the full intent to attack. During the elevator ride to the top of the building with Trish suddenly disappears from inside the elevator. Bucciarati sees that all that is left is her left hand. He then realizes the horrible truth that this whole time the boss had planned to kill his own daughter himself in an attempt to sever any past connections to, himself. Enraged by this inhumane action, Bucciarati uses his stand, known as Sticky Fingers, which has the ability to unzip objects and people without hurting them, as well as traveling through dimensions created by the zippers. He unzips the floor of the elevator, revealing that the boss is sliding down the ropes of the elevator shaft with Trish in his arms. Bucciarati still doesn't know how the boss was able to make her disappear in an instant, but he follows the boss all the way to the basement. The boss knows that he is being followed and gives a verbal warning that should Bucciarati continue and attack him, that he would perish. Bucciarati ignores the warning and jumps after the boss, but he disappears from sight and Trish falls to the floor. He then appears behind Bucciarati. In a state of shock, Bucciarati is told that the boss has the power to erase time, meaning that for a small period of time only the boss can react to others and move. And during the end of this erased time, only the boss can remember what happened. A fight ensues. The boss remains unseen, and his stand, King Crimson, seriously wounds Bucciarati, who manages to escape as the rest of the gang enters the building. The five discover Bucciarati as they take him and Trish outside. Bucciarati and Giorno reveal their plans, as well as deciding to take Trish with them to keep her safe. They tell the gang that should they choose to stay with them, they too would be marked as traitors. Giorno, Bucciarati, and Trish board a boat, while the others decide to join them one by one, except for Panicotta Fugo, who stays behind. The second half of the part then revolves around the gang trying to keep Trish safe from danger, as well as finding the boss's true identity. Eventually, the gang discovers the boss's true identity is that of a man named Vinegar Doppio, with his self-given name being Diavolo, a man with a split personality who grew up in the small town of Sardinia. Diavolo had originally discovered a series of 6 arrowheads made out of a meteorite, originally discovered in Part 3 Stardust Crusaders. These arrows are imbued with an ancient virus that has the potential to grant people who are there pierced by a stand. However, the arrows also possess a hidden power. Through all of these years, the arrows had been spread across the world, and a character from Part 3, Jean-Pierre Polnareff, obtains one. He had been crippled by Diavolo years prior, but had discovered the secret power of the arrows, and was now attempting to give the information to Bucciarati and his gang. Diavolo follows their group on the way to Polnareff, and in an attempt to obtain the arrow and use it on himself. The arrows are supernatural in nature, possessing a sort of power beyond that of humans, determining if a person is worthy of a higher power or not. And if a person's stand is pierced by the arrow and is deemed not worthy, then it causes their stand to go berserk, and their stand will take the arrow from its user and go rogue, often stopping at nothing to keep the arrow in its possession. An example of this is when Polnareff had managed to find Bucciarati's gang, but Diavolo had made an attempt to kill Polnareff before he could hand the arrow to Bucciarati. Polnareff stabs his stand with the arrow just in time, causing his stand to evolve and go berserk in the process, in order to keep the arrow away from Diavolo. In the process, however, the stand goes rogue and kills Polnareff, and with its newfound ability, the stand switches everyone in the immediate vicinity's souls. Bucciarati, who is now inside Diavolo's body, manages to destroy the rogue stand, switching the bodies back and landing the arrow by Giorno's feet. Diavolo, now back in his own body, rushes towards Giorno, who stabs his gold experience right before Diavolo erases time. Now, if the arrow deems someone to be worthy, their stand evolves into its Requiem form, as it is called, and typically the evolved stand will gain a new ability. Giorno's Requiem gains the ability to revert all actions back to 0, meaning if someone were to attack him in general, even fatally, Gold Experience Requiem would make it so that the attack never happened. Because of this, Gold Experience Requiem reverts Diavolo's erased time, without Giorno himself even realizing it. The boss is stuck in a state of shock and he is killed by Giorno. As the weeks pass, Giorno becomes the head of the organization known as Passione, and that is the end of Part 5, Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, Golden Wind. The other part that the story is heavily based off of is Part 6 of Jojo's Bizarre Adventure, Stone Ocean, representing the theme of fate similar to Golden Wind, in which a loyal follower of Dio, a priest named Enrico Pucci, attempts to carry on Dio's legacy and will. It is revealed that Dio's true plan all along was to force humanity into a permanent mental state known as heaven. This entails all of the life in the universe being forever forced to be aware of their fated actions in order to accept and overcome them. This also means, however, that they will not be able to change their physical actions, besides being able to think to themselves and occasionally talk. Dio believed that this would put the universe at true peace, and that he and his followers alone would be able to reign over this new universe. But to accomplish this task, there would have to be a new universe, in order to give rise to this new state of being. However, Dio was killed by Part 3's protagonist, Jotaro Kujo, as well as his grandfather, a fortune-teller from Egypt, and two men that they met along the way to Egypt, where Dio resided, in order to stop his reign of terror. Afterwards, Jotaro found Dio's diary containing his specific instructions to Pucci to obtain heaven, read the contents, and burned the book, forever sealing its contents in his memory. However, all hope was not lost, as Enrico Pucci's stand, Whitesnake, possessed the ability to force people into a dreamlike state and take both their memory and their stand, storing them in discs. By now, I'm sure you guys have noticed that a lot of these stands' names are based off of musical albums or just pop culture references like Whitesnake, Crazy Diamond, Aerosmith, and of course, that's not the extent, but there's a lot that are named after popular references, and that's part of the series' charm, I would say. Anyways, after many years of planning, Pucci managed to frame Jotaro Kujo's daughter for murder in an attempt to draw Jotaro to the prison where an ambush awaited him. The plan worked, and Pucci stole both Jotaro's memory and stand. Pucci then set out to complete the necessary sacrifices stated in the diary. First, he would need to obtain the souls of more than 36 sinners, then a reincarnation of Dio's evil would be born. He stayed in the prison. Being a priest, he had access to certain places. Eventually, after a few months of being in the prison, Pucci managed to gather the 36 prisoners all in one room, giving one of them a stand disc he had collected years prior. The stand had the ability to awaken one's anger, causing the 36 all to fight to the death in a prison break. During all of this time, however, Jolene had managed to get back the stand disc of Jotaro Kujo and rally a small group of her fellow inmates to try and find the man who put her father into a coma and find out why he did it. Jolene manages to view a part of Pucci's plan through the memory disk of one of the prisoners Pucci had sent to kill Jolene before. She then managed to get a hand on the reincarnated being before Pucci, and she attempted to escape with it, so Pucci had no choice but to reveal himself in order to get it back. He injured Jolene and one of the people in her group and managed to absorb the small green child, and then he left the prison. Now, according to the diary, he needed to now find a place where the Earth's gravity was weaker than average, as well as waiting for the new moon in order to fully obtain his completed power and complete the plan. He then threw away the rest of the discs and began headed southward. The discs were retrieved by an organization that Jotaro was part of, who were keeping his body alive, known as the Speedwagon Foundation, which was previously explained in, I believe it was, Part 2. Now, I know all this sounds very random, and some of it also very specific, but this was, in the series, it was described as a spiritual process, so that through completing these tasks, Dio believed Pucci's spirit, and therefore his stand, Whitesnake, had the potential to evolve to the point where he could complete Dio's will. After all, if the stand is a manifestation of one's energy and desires, it was possible for him to evolve to obtain the capabilities to help the universe obtain heaven. Near the end of the part, Jolene escapes prison chasing after Pucci. He arrived at Cape Canaveral's Kennedy Space Center and began to feel he was nearing the right position. However, it was still 3 days before the new moon, and Jolene and the rest were now at the Space Center as well. Pucci's stand was now beginning to change, both in appearance and abilities. He had begun to manipulate gravity unconsciously at first, but then he began to understand these abilities. This marked the beginning of his newfound stand, which he named Sea-Moon, having the ability to make its user, Enrico Pucci, the center of an inverse gravity for 2 kilometers, meaning anything above Pucci would float up for 2 kilometers before returning to a normal gravity, as if it were falling upwards, and anything to his side would fall away 2 kilometers before being returned to normal gravity, and anything that touched him directly would completely inverse itself. He used this power to turn Jolene's hand inside out during a fight, but suddenly Jotaro arrived to stop Pucci from completing his plans. Once more, I apologize for exposition dumping, but during Part 3, in the battle with Dio, Jotaro's stand, Star Platinum, had learned how to stop time. Pucci was frightened by Jotaro's sudden reappearance and realized his mistake of throwing away the discs as Jotaro pummeled him through a window frame at the Space Center. While Jotaro tended to his daughter, her and her friends informed him of everything that was happening, but Pucci realized something that would end all of this for good. If he was the center of an inverse gravity, then theoretically he could become weightless upon being in an enclosed shape, so he positioned himself in the window frame and jumped into the air. Seemingly in zero gravity, it had worked. This way, he wouldn't have to wait for the new moon, and upon reaching the correct height would be in the perfect position to complete his ability. Jotaro, upon realizing this, immediately stopped time, halting Pucci's ascension after reaching about 20 feet into the air. He used his stand, Star Platinum, to throw a metal spear in his direction, but to Jotaro's complete terror, Pucci's eyes moved towards the spear in the stop time before it began to move again. Impossible, Jotaro thought. No one can be aware, nor move in the stop time, but because of physics and gravity being forever intertwined with the flow of time, somehow Pucci became aware during the 5 seconds of stop time using Sea Moon, and as time resumed, Pucci deflected the metal spear and continued rising until he reached the perfect position. It was at this point that a blinding light appeared, knocking everyone unconscious. When they awoke, they realized it was far too late, and Pucci had indeed obtained his desires. His stand evolved one last time. He named this newfound ability Made in Heaven, and suddenly, time began to accelerate. His newly completed power manipulated the gravity of the universe in a way that made time accelerate exponentially. As Pucci disappeared, Jotaro stopped time and saw that Pucci was right in front of them, moving way too fast to see. But in the stop time had shortened, and was now reduced to only 2 seconds. Pucci then began to take out the group one by one. Jotaro stopped time once more as Pucci was flying past them. He made an attempt to go after Pucci in the 2 or so seconds he had, when suddenly, Pucci's stand moved in the stop time, throwing a set of knives at Jolene that he had obtained from the Space Center food court using his incredible speed. There was now less than a second left of the stop time, and Jotaro was forced to stop his attack to save his daughter. As soon as time resumed, Pucci ran full speed through Jotaro, killing him instantly. The only one now left alive was a young boy named Emporio, who had managed to escape during the chaos. Time continued to accelerate, and the universe reached a singularity point, ending the old universe and creating a new one that Pucci fully controlled, limiting everyone's actions to their determined fates, where he was the only exception. He made it also so that the souls of the Joestars and Kujos would not be allowed to pass into this new universe. But he had completely forgotten to make sure Emporio could not enter this new universe as well. And although Emporio could not control his movements, Pucci decided he had to kill Emporio to get rid of any traces of his enemies from the previous universe. One thing that Pucci, however, had failed to realize was that in this new universe, Emporio was housing some of the discs obtained earlier in the part, and through attacking Emporio's body, inserted the stand disc weather report into him. And since this was not a fated action, rather something done by Pucci's own free will, Emporio was able to control the stand, which, as showcased previously in the part, possessed the power to manipulate weather. Emporio then turned the air around them into 100% oxygen, which over time is harmful to the human body, and due to the accelerated time that Pucci was using during attacking Emporio, was able to speed up the harm he was doing to his body. Emporio managed to kill Pucci, and the universe began to crumble, resetting once more. In this new and final universe, Pucci had perished, and everyone now had no memory of their previous lives, and were once again able to control their actions. The souls that Pucci had not allowed to pass over were also brought back, and Emporio was now the only one who could recall the events of the previous universes and occurrences. The new universe that had been born was now far different than the original, and all the events from then on had never occurred. That marks the end of Part 6 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Stone Ocean. It also marks the reboot of the series, with all the parts after Part 6 being set in this new universe, with tales and possibilities to explore. Also, in Your Bizarre Adventure, there is a game mode known as Steel Ball Run, which, as you can guess, is based off of the 7th part of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Steel Ball Run, also represents the series reboot, now taking place in the new universe, allowing the author Hirohiko Araki to completely rewrite characters into new lives. In this new universe, the arrows had never existed. Rather, Jesus is born and died on the cross, and his physical body stayed on Earth and was dispersed across the continent of Northern America hundreds of years prior to the part's setting. These holy corpse parts, as they are so called in the series, are bestowed with the power to give one a stand after prolonged exposure. Presently, in the year 1890, the President of the United States, Funny Valentine, had obtained and merged with the heart of the corpse, giving him a stand, and he now wished to possess the rest of the parts to make the United States a great nation. He then plots a course across the country according to a map that the follower of Jesus had left to all the pieces of the corpse, and sets up a cross-country horse race he calls the Steel Ball Run in the attempt to let its participants unintentionally locate each remaining piece. Some others, however, discover this plan and attempt to gain the parts for themselves. And this is the basic premise of Part 7 of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Steel Ball Run. And with all that being said, that's basically all the context you need to know for your bizarre adventure in terms of the story it's based off of. In the next episode, we'll go into the more niche aspects of your bizarre adventure, including both the game's combat, storyline, and overall some more information on how you play the game itself. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and tune in for the next one to get more information.